launched by Aborigines from the nearby Aboriginal Tent Embassy, sparked by Tony Abbott, who said the embassy, now in its 40th year, should be shut down.
Welcome to Media Watch 2012. I'm Jonathan Holmes. And as everyone knows by now, Tony Abbott didn't say that the Aboriginal Tent Embassy should be shut down. Here, once again, is what he did say to an ABC reporter on Australia Day morning.
I think the Indigenous people of Australia can be very proud of the respect in which they are held by every Australian. And yes, I think a lot's changed since then, and I think it probably is time to move on from that.
Time to move on from that. But that's not what the protesters heard. Tent Embassy founder Michael Anderson reportedly told Wire Service AAP on the afternoon of the protest,
he said the Aboriginal Embassy had to go. We heard it on a radio broadcast.
Perhaps someone heard this on Sydney's Radio 2UE at a couple of minutes after 1 o'clock that day.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Tony Abbott says he'd like to see the Tent Embassy shut down.
That's the first reference we've found anywhere to Abbott wanting the embassy shut down. Certainly, as far as we can tell, nothing like it was aired on the ABC that morning. 2UE tells us it got the story from AAP, though AAP claims it wasn't until 6 minutes later that it put out its first report on Tony Abbott's remarks.
Time for Tent Embassy to fold, says Tony Abbott.
It read in part,
Mr Abbott said he understood why the Tent Embassy was set up all those years ago. However, it was time it was disbanded, he said.
For some hours, that was the most easily accessible account of what Abbott had said, posted on news websites around the country. As AAP admitted last week,
it simply was not a good performance. The simple explanation is that a quote from Mr Abbott was misinterpreted and a paraphrasing of his quote was inaccurate.
AAP claims it corrected its story within the hour, but the tone of the media's coverage had been set. Of course, we don't know precisely what the PM's press flack Tony Hodges said to ACT union boss Kim Sattler, or what she told Aboriginal activist Barbara Shaw. But when the nation's principal wire service misinterprets a sensitively worded comment, it's perhaps not surprising that lots of other people do too. On the bright side, AAP editor-in-chief Tony Gillies writes,
what I can say without reservation is that our reporting of this story was not motivated by a political agenda or malice.
Or, as Tony Abbott might have put it, shit happens. And talking of unpleasant audio, here are some of the comments posted by readers of this story about the protest on Yahoo 7.
Black trash, Australia's curse.
Why are they called boongs? Because that's the noise they make when they hit the bull bar.
Nice, eh? And there were plenty more like that. It's a problem preoccupying the editors of news websites across Australia and around the world. How do you deal with abusive online comments? Well, first, you make some rules.
Guidelines for posting content on Yahoo 7. Do not use profanity, obscenities, abusive language. Also not welcome are belligerence, insults, slurs, bullying, racially offensive and generally objectionable speech.
Problem is, on a popular site like Yahoo 7, a lot of people who comment disregard the rules. Here's another story about the Tent Embassy affair posted the same day on the same site.
Embarrassment for PM after protests.
The story was fair enough, but here are a few of the comments.
Typical boongs, not a brain between them and too much VB. What has a red head and brown knickers and was running away from boongs?
The Abbottola is a gutless pommy bastard who doesn't give a shit about Australians.
The problem is Yahoo 7 operates differently from most other mainstream Australian news sites. News Limited, ABC News, Fairfax Media and, to a large extent, 9MSN all pre-moderate online comments. In other words, someone laboriously reads every comment before it's posted. If it doesn't accord with the rules, it isn't posted at all. But Yahoo 7, along with other global sites like Facebook and YouTube, has adopted the far cheaper and quicker alternative, what it calls notice and take down. Comments are posted online immediately. If other users reckon a post breaks the rules, they can click on this button.
Report abuse.
And that will alert a moderator who may take it down. But on these comments, it seems nobody did. Yahoo 7 tell us,
Unfortunately, in this instance, these comments had not been reported to us for review and removal, and none of the specific words used within the comments raised a flag within our technology filter moderation tools. We are now adding relevant words to these filters.
You'd think "bung" would have been added years ago. Apparently not. Yahoo 7 has work to do. For some thoughtful responses on the issue from a lot of mainstream news sites, including Yahoo 7, visit our website. And while you're there, post your own thoughts, politely, please. And now, staying with matters indigenous, to Western Australia, where a lot of the media misreported a smaller but more tragic story. It started with this police news release on January the 2nd.
Concern for missing persons. Warburton Police are concerned for the welfare of an 8-year-old girl. She is believed to be in the company of a 38-year-old man.
The release named the girl and the adult male and showed photographs of both. After all, they were both missing from a remote community in the Gibson Desert. As the West Australian accurately reported on its website the same day, the man was
38-year-old family friend Augustine Winter Miller.
But the following afternoon, with the man and the girl still missing, News Limited websites around the country relayed a report from its West Australian site, Perth Now.
Perth Now has learnt that Augustine Winter Miller, 38, was convicted of child sex offences in January 2006.
The child sex angle. Nothing is more calculated to send the media into a frenzy. Miller's conviction is a matter of public record. 7 years ago, he had a sexual relationship over several months with a 14-year-old girl. In sentencing him, the judge said,
"Children under the age of 16 in our law can't legally consent to a sexual relationship, but in fact I accept that it was consensual."
None of those details were in Perth Now's report, but it did carry this dramatic claim about Miller's disappearance with the 8-year-old.
Police now believe the girl may have been abducted.
We asked Perth Now what it based that claim on. It responded that its reporters had
interviewed several people, including police, in relation to this matter. A very credible source expressed fear that the girl may have been abducted.
Well, maybe. But the WA Police Media Unit's Inspector Bill Money told Media Watch last week,
"The information we received from the elder at the community was that Mr. Miller was with an 8-year-old girl and had gone hunting for a wounded kangaroo. We believe he simply got lost."
Police never had any evidence, says Inspector Money, that the girl had been abducted. So what does he think about Perth Now's report?
"I believe it was irresponsible, unfair and misleading."
But the story was about to turn into a tragedy. Miller and the girl were found in remote bushland that afternoon. The girl was severely dehydrated, and despite desperate efforts by police and paramedics, she died shortly afterwards. Her death only gave the story added impetus. In the Australian next morning, an otherwise accurate report led off,
An 8-year-old girl has died after spending 4 days alone with a convicted child sex offender in Western Australia's remote desert.
The impression that lead Pa gave the reader was reinforced by the headline.
Girl dies after pedophile ordeal.
The Australian's editor admits frankly to Media Watch that the headline
was very poorly worded and went beyond our understanding of events as set out in the news story. It was clearly inappropriate.
But the Oz was by no means alone. That same morning, Fairfax media websites carried a report by Perth Now's rival in the West, WA Today.
Abducted girl, 8, dies after desert rescue. An 8-year-old girl allegedly abducted by a convicted pedophile has died after being found severely dehydrated near Warburton yesterday.
But no one had made any allegation that she'd been abducted except Perth Now's anonymous source. Sky News' Michael Hopkin went further.
We expect police to lay charges against Mr. Miller today of taking the girl from the community. When I spoke to police a short time ago, they were unable to tell me exactly when those charges will be laid.
Which isn't surprising because, according to Inspector Money, there was never any question of charging Mr. Miller with taking the girl.
We didn't give any information to journalists that Mr. Miller would be charged with anything other than unlicensed firearms offences.
We've had no response to our questions from Sky News. At a press conference that morning, Inspector Money faced a barrage of questions about possible sexual abuse.
At this stage, it's just pure speculation, and I'm not going to go there.
And he made this request to the media.
I ask you all not to mention the girl's name or a photo anymore now that she's deceased for cultural sensitivity.
It was a waste of the inspector's breath. It shouldn't need the police to tell the media about the sensitivity of using the name or showing pictures of recently dead Aboriginal people. Yet even outlets that otherwise reported the affair responsibly, like the ABC and the West Australian, used the girl's picture long after her death was confirmed. So did 7 News, which claimed this.
Her mother has asked that for cultural reasons we don't use her daughter's name, but she allowed us to show her photograph.
We've pixelated the image, 7 News did not. But the interview with the girl's mother aired by 7 News came from regional affiliate GWN7. According to its news editor, the family had asked her reporter,
"Please don't use her name." But the language barrier was difficult and no one spoke specifically about the photo.
On that basis, GWN7 decided to blur the girl's picture, unlike 7 News. So did the girl's mother give 7 News permission to use her daughter's picture? We haven't spoken to her directly, but another member of the Warburton community spoke to the mother on our behalf and told us,
"She's not happy about it and she didn't give permission. The rest of the community was just stunned that it had happened. It's not a done thing."
7 News' Howard Gretton responds,
"We acted in good faith with what we believed was the mother's permission to use her daughter's photograph, but not her name."
Well, Howard, on an issue like that, mere belief really isn't good enough. As for the allegations of abduction and child abuse, 2 days ago, the ABC's David Webber reported,
Police say an autopsy on the 8-year-old girl, who can't be named for cultural reasons, has now been completed and there is no evidence of sexual assault. Miller says he's still haunted by what happened in the desert.
Mr. Miller has been charged with possessing an unlicensed firearm and a traffic infringement, nothing else. Understandably, he's upset about the media coverage. He told Media Watch today,
"They shouldn't have made allegations. They jumped the gun. They only said what they wanted to say without getting the proper story."
But people with Mr. Miller's resources don't usually sue for defamation, and the media know it. That's it for now. It's good to be back. Until next week, good night.